Can you see?
Oh yeah, yeah. I see. Okay, great.
Am I really audible? No.
Yeah, you're audible. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining in. Welcome to the session. Today, we have with us Professor A.G. Ramakrishnan from the Department of Electrical Engineering, IISc. Professor Ramakrishnan works in the areas of machine learning in audio, images, and neuroscience. He is a fellow of Indian National Academy of Engineering. He obtained Sir Andrew Watt K. Young Researchers Prize from the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, Glasgow, for the studies he carried out on leprosy patients as a part of his PhD work. Apart from this, he has also volunteered as a seminar leader in Landmark Education Worldwide, which is an international organization that conducts programs which produce decisive breakthroughs in people's lives in any area of interest. In today's session, he'll be talking about the importance and means of maintaining a healthy lifestyle, both mental and physical. So, without further ado, we'll now start this session. If somebody has any doubts, they may use the hand raise option or write it in the chat box, and Professor Ramakrishnan will answer that. So, let us all give a warm welcome to Professor Ramakrishnan, and we'll start now. Everybody, please show some excitement. We should welcome him. Professor Ramakrishnan.
Okay. Thank you. Can you see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Nikita, and thanks a lot for Professor Anand and Dr. Banani. And before I start, I want to acknowledge Dr. Banani. She's incidentally, she is my teacher who started me on the journey of breathing exercises. And I was taking BP tablets for around 9.5 years. It's slightly old. It's now 4 to 5 years old. And with the time, the tablets are only increasing, and not much happened otherwise. So after I started this breathing, and then I further developed, learned more about it, and now the past 4.5 5 years, I am without any tablets, and quite healthy also, and much more healthier and energetic than I was maybe 10 years back. So I want to acknowledge my teacher for this pranayam. Dr. Banani is also a very good friend now. So let us start. Let us start with a very nice.
I must say that you are also a good student.
Of course, any good teacher is a good student. So let us start with a nice ancient prayer. I like this very much. It is very, very ancient, and people don't know, who said this and from where, but it is used quite a bit. So this says, "Sarve bhavantu sukinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti." So what it really means is, may all beings, so they didn't say only human being, may all beings be joyful. May no one suffer from illness. It cannot be a better time than now to appreciate, how deeply they have thought about this advantage. And may all see what is auspicious. And may no one experience sadness. And then it ends, peace, peace, peace. I think it is, peace where I am, peace where you are, and peace everywhere. So let's get into this. So the goal of my talk is good physical health is based on fairly simple principles. Of course, you need to keep learning for the details, but the basic principles, in my opinion, are fairly simple. And mental health is much more important than physical health, more involved, and requires lifelong learning, reflection, application, experimentation, and sharing with other human beings, what we got. So this talk has the potential to fundamentally transform your relationship to your health, your mind, and the world. If you are ready to give me the benefit of doubt and listen. So this is not very well organized, so please feel free to ask questions. I just put my random thoughts, but this is my passion, so I have a lot of things to share. But like I said, it's not very perfectly organized like a regular class. So maybe that will make it more interesting also, I don't know. So about physical health, so the purpose of my talk is again, each of you getting present to your miraculous body. Our body is self-healing, it is intelligent, and it's an obedient machine. But, you have to really be bad to make it, become worse and misbehave. And that we have voluntary control over our so-called involuntary organs, such as the heart. I wish you were all, in a real room nearby. I would like to do some experiments. I can, demonstrate in 5 minutes that just by thinking, any one of you can easily increase the, peripheral temperature in your hand. Where actually I have many thermometers which I use I have done this demonstration many times in my class. So you can increase your body temperature, the skin temperature by 1 to 2 degrees, just within 10 minutes. And this doesn't require, you don't need to be a yogi or rishi or anything, any human being have done it. So that is the power of our thinking over our body. And we'll also look at simple but valuable facts about how to eat. Not what to eat. Too much talk about what to eat, cholesterol, that all kinds of nonsense, but how to eat. And that cancer cannot spread when the tissue is oxygen rich. So that is again the connection to breathing. I don't know how much I should talk about breathing. After I started benefiting from breathing, I went on reading so much. Now I have a chapter in a book, published by the director of Patanjali Yoga Research Foundation on the physiological and other background, why breathing is so powerful and effective for our body. And we are also doing some experiments, and I have submitted a proposal to DST Satyam. Maybe, we'll be getting it very soon. And what is the importance of deep breathing for our brain? And each of you learning that you can modify the expression of your genes or DNA by just positive thoughts, food, and or word. And finally, I'm also committed and request you that you take positive action based on what you learn. Because this is not something that I want you to learn and be able to talk about it, but rather take it to your life. And about mental health, one of my friends, she's a professor in computer science in IIT Madras, and 2 of her students, they were diagnosed to be, high depression, and they took them to doctor. And finally, the doctors, after inquiring quite a bit, they said that these people are always sitting inside the AC room in the lab, and they have not seen sunlight for a long time. So the doctor just advised every day you expose yourself 10 minutes. So it is very well known now that sunlight takes away your depression and gives you a positive mood. Finally, we're all too like animals. So one way of looking at it is just being with nature. And we also want to look at the power of your thought and word. And I want to tell you, the first thing is acknowledge one person every day. I'll tell you more about it very immediately. And like you already said, mental health is more important than physical health. See, people are living without a limb. There are people living without 2 legs also. So, you can still have a powerful life. You might have seen such things on YouTube. But mental health is much more important. And somehow in India, we don't give as much importance as physical health. It's very important. And I also want to tell you, especially for students, you should know that parents and teachers are not trained on how to be effective as parents or teachers. And another most important thing to keep always in your memory in your life is when you are in real trouble, you should know that even this will pass away. Anything good or bad will pass after some time. So let us start with acknowledgement. So acknowledgement and appreciation, this is unfortunately very, very limited in the world. So let me ask a question. So all the people here, how many of you like to be acknowledged and appreciated by other people? And you feel really happy when somebody says something good about you? Please raise your hands. Please tell the truth. I don't think there can be so many rishis here who doesn't look for acknowledgement at all. Many people have not raised their hands. Please be, I do look for appreciation. At the end of this talk, I want somebody to say that it was good. Thank you. So keep your hand up. Now, how many of you regularly acknowledge other people? If you regularly acknowledge other people, you can put down your hands. Otherwise, you keep it up. So now you can see that, there are many hands still up. Okay, maybe because I'm saying it is going down. Nothing wrong, this is wrong. We're all like that. So while every one of us want to be acknowledged and appreciated, we don't reciprocate it the same way. And let me make this very, very clear that look at the last bullet here. There cannot be much happiness in a person who does not or cannot acknowledge others. You just try it for the next 1 week. At least acknowledge one person every day. Find something good. All of us have certain negative things. We know very well, how to criticize others. But let us also look at what is positive in other people and try to acknowledge and appreciate that. And just see how much positive energy you can create around you. And somebody told me, and it's very, very interesting. They said that acknowledgement says more about the person who acknowledges than the one being acknowledged. So this can come from acknowledging a person from the future. I'll explain why it is. See, suppose you see somebody helps you and you say thanks. That's also a simple acknowledgement of appreciation. But I'm not looking at that. Acknowledgement as a creation. You can tell a person, oh, you will be an amazing teacher, the way you explain this to me. Or you will be an amazing singer, or a designer, or whatever. Then you are creating a great future for that person. And for that, you need to be creative and should be generous to be able to say that. That is where they are saying that if you can do that, then it says more about you, that you are able to acknowledge a person like that, even though you don't see it now and you are acknowledging from the future. And, that about the person. And, people, when I tell that I don't have anybody to acknowledge, that really means that, you're not looking around. You may acknowledge a driver, of a bus that you got down, or an auto rickshaw, or a maid, a policeman. Today, if you are able to talk and you are able to listen, somebody is able to maintain this software. Thousands of people develop this Microsoft Teams or any other software for this. It has evolved and evolved and evolved, and now we are able to do so many things on this. We are able to record, we are able to see our face, listen to each other, project slides, project some.
Professor, can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
This. So, it's true. Acknowledgement is has to be there, but sometimes I found many of my friends and my relatives, they are too much in acknowledging, and all. Sometimes they get they suffer and they feel that, oh, I lost to acknowledge this. They have these kinds of regret also. Then how to deal with that kind of thing?
I didn't quite get it. They always acknowledge, and sometimes they feel bad that they didn't acknowledge. Is it?
No. Let's say somehow they miss the opportunity to acknowledge. Okay, then it makes a kind of regret, kind of feeling. Oh, I should acknowledge this, or I should appreciate this. Oh, I missed. How can I do this? They started suffering inside. It's like some kind of too much into some kind of thing, no detachment. Then how to overcome these kinds of things?
So
if that happens,
you have to simply take the phone and call that person whom they have missed and acknowledge this. It is as simple as that. There is nothing more. Don't make it a big issue. They had missed it, now they can do it now. You're still alive, so you can do it.
Okay.
Actually, in the program that I was a seminar leader, we used to make people, some people feel bad that they will not acknowledge their father, and the father is no more. And I say, I am your father now. Tell me what you want to say. We can complete that. It's possible. So it's not just complicated. Did I answer your question?
Thank you, sir. No, that's thank you.
So when I talk about yoga and pranayama in our country, unfortunately, there are so-called intellectuals who talk nonsense. They think whatever they say is correct, and they mislead people. Yogasanas or pranayama properly practiced improve your body-mind communication and coexistence. So my body now tells me, when it likes to eat or it doesn't like to eat, and when it is happy with something, it's not happy with. You can actually communicate with your body. It's so powerful. If I ask you to take a deep breath, does it have anything to do with your faith or God? That is how some people project, oh, this is Hindu thing and all that. It's just nonsense. All of us have a body, all of us have a lung, and you may think that breathing has when somebody talks about pranayama, it is such something with God. But what I definitely know is, if you don't take a breath for a few minutes, then your brain will be permanently dead, irrespective of your faith or even if you don't believe in God. So let us be clear, logical. These are about every human being and about our mental and physical health. This has nothing to do with religion. So it's like, you go to your doctor, you don't bother about, which religion he belongs in. If he's a great doctor, he will take care of you, and, he will do a surgery, whatever. Similarly, somebody came out. It so happened that they were following Sanatana Dharma. It doesn't mean anything, You look at the logical things, scientific questions, and then follow. So I want to say that breathing, body movement, mind, observing your own breath, all of these are fundamental to every human being, irrespective of your faith or no faith. There's no connection to that. And this is something very interesting. I learned this from somebody, very exciting, that your mind can instantly create a new mood. If I say, I tell all of you now, create an enthusiastic mood. You can actually create that out of your will to do that. Are you able to see my face? Somebody says, create an enthusiastic mood. I just say, like this, you just jump and all that. And then you can actually create an enthusiastic mood. And that is the capability of our mind. And you need to find out, friends or an atmosphere in which you can create that. And you can change your mood. And actually, you can completely kill your enthusiasm by talking about certain politicians or some financial fraudsters, which we do many times at the coffee house. So it's a choice, and you give the gift of smile to people around you, and you can instantly create a positive, happy mood around. And if there is a negative, nagging thought that you have, you are upset about somebody, or you are irritated about somebody, or you hate someone, or whatever, anger or something. First of all, you should know that, it's not good for you. Forget about the other person. Somebody said, hatred is like, taking poison, you taking a poison, and then expecting the other person to die. Think about it. So when there is a negative thought, it really upgrades your brain. And what I learned is you can slowly evaporate it by consciously wanting to get rid of it while exhaling powerfully. So it's like, you suppose I don't like somebody and I want to get rid of it. I want that memory to go. I want those circuits in the brain to be, disconnected. It's possible, whenever you are learning, there are new circuits formed in the brain. And whenever you don't want, you can actually disconnect those circuits. That's what I learned. It's so powerful. And brain is the most plastic organ in your body. So the way you do it is, try this. I have tried it. It's so powerful. Relax, sit and relax in a calm place, and then take maybe a little deep breaths, because that calms your mind and increases your attention to your inside. And then suppose I hate about somebody and I want to give up that, I actively think about it. I need to give up this, and then I say, powerfully exhale. But most important is being intentional. If you are not intentional, it will not work. So the choice is yours. Try these things. Moving on. So whatever I said, some of these things, more than your research topic, you need to constantly learn this. This is not something, if I teach matrix theory, and somebody wants me to teach singular value decomposition, I can teach in two or three classes. And you do some exercises and maybe get your questions cleared, and that's all. You have learned singular value decomposition, I have taught this over. But life is not like that. Learning to live a powerful life requires constant lifelong learning. There are so many aspects, and you are not the same person after a few years. Your thoughts have changed, your interests have changed, your desires have changed. When you are a kid, like to play with some toys. Now you don't want to even look at it. So we are constantly evolving, and people around are evolving. World is evolving. So you need to constantly learn how to live a powerful life in the constantly changing world. And I personally feel that it would be great to be coached to be highly effective in whatever one is engaged in, whether it is relationship, communication, health, business, academics, marriage. You can see, you hear people, at the age of 40, 50, they, annul their marriage after they have many children. So that means there is something fundamentally missing in their understanding of issue. And somebody who has studied it, they say that, in a good marriage, people reasonably understand each other after 7 years. So it takes that much time. And in this context, I must say very importantly, this constant learning and need to be coached is very much true for professors and parents. Because many of your students may have a lot of complaints about some professors or your parents, your father or mother. But you should know that they were not trained. That many managers, when you join as a management trainee, they train you very well. When you join as an army or police officer, you are constantly trained throughout your life. But a professor, when we get a PhD from a great place, they just put you and they expect you to know everything. Okay? It's very unfortunate. Actually, that doesn't really work. Some people may be very good researchers, but they be poor teachers. Some people may be very good teachers, but not very powerful in handling students. And you should appreciate that. They are also human beings like you. And parents, again, like that. Suddenly they find themselves married, and then they have a kid, and they themselves don't know how to handle themselves. Now they have to handle the children. So you need to, once you understand all this, your complaints will reduce. So there are no training programs for parents and teachers, but I feel it's very much needed in our current context. Not only in IISc, from anywhere, any great institution needs constant training of the people who are involved in dealing with other human beings. And this is an appeal to the context of this wellness committee. And only committee, 1 or 2 people cannot do this. I want each of you to be responsible for this. Please raise a flag when you see too much negativity in a person. When you see somebody taking drugs, I hear that this is going on in some hospitals now, or too much smoking or drinks. There is nothing fundamentally wrong with the person. It is indicative of more fundamental issues that the person is dealing with. When I was a student in IIT Madras, I interviewed all the hostel, the mess employees. I found that all the majority of the people who were smoking, their families were away in Andhra, somewhere else. People who were living with their family in Chennai, they were less smoking. So, there could be other issues there, So instead of decrying the person, if you see something, please inform somebody responsible. You can inform the wellness committee or the chairman of the department. And if you think the chairman may not do it, if you think, AGR may not do it, it's a lazy form, then you can also inform one more faculty member. And if you don't want to write a direct letter or talk to them, then write an anonymous letter that this person needs some support. And that will make a huge difference. Now let's come to, I told you the basic principles of health is very simple. And that's whatever is there in this slide, if you just follow, half of your health problems will be over. So eat only if you are hungry. If you are from Karnataka, anytime people meet you, coffee kudiyona, or uta aita, So it's all about food. But let's understand that, we should eat only when you are hungry. Even a lion, they say, it doesn't hurt other animals if it is not hungry. So we should eat only if you are hungry. You should drink water only if you are thirsty. And another important thing which I have started practicing quite a bit now is complete all eating before 8:30 p.m. at night. So if you go for a movie and come back, don't eat a normal lunch at that time. You reduce it. Maybe take a banana or whatever you can get. The more delayed it is, you reduce your intake, and nothing happens if you don't eat and sleep. And go to bed by 10:30 p.m. in complete darkness. There are a lot of research available around this. I didn't want to complicate it with so many references, but anything that you have a question about, please write to me. I'll give my email ID at the end. I can give you references. So we have evolved over millennia, and all animals, including human beings, they were sleeping at night, when the sun is set and the moon is up. So the body does a lot of repair and rejuvenation during this time, 10:30 p.m. to 3:30 a.m. And you have to sleep in darkness. Then the brain rejuvenates, and there are many other things. And if you don't do that, you are increasing your risk for Alzheimer's in your later years. So just do this. Eat when you're hungry. Drink only if you're thirsty. Finish eating before 8:30 and sleep between 10:30 and 3:30. So these 4 simple rules, if we can follow, you will improve your health quite a bit. And activity. So this is something I interestingly read recently. So they said that, all of us have heard of breast cancer, bone cancer, liver cancer, lung cancer, these are all organs which don't normally move much. But there is no cancer of the heart. Have you anyone had a cancer of the heart? No. Skeletal muscles in the hands and legs? No. So they have asked that question, does it mean that constantly active tissues are protected somehow? Because the logic behind this, I think, is the volume of our blood vessels is around 8 liters, adult average they say, and the volume of actual blood is only 5.5 liters. So there is not enough blood to fill all the blood vessels at all times. So the brain always decides what is now the most important thing. After lunch, it sends more to your stomach. That's why when you sit in a class at 2 o'clock after your good lunch in the hostel, you feel sleepy. So nothing wrong with you, because brain thinks that I need to send more to the stomach now unless it's available for the brain. So if there are some tissues which are not moving at all, so maybe the brain is not sending enough blood and they are not maintained well. So we need to make sure that every tissue, every part of the body is active. And that is where I think things like yogasanas, body massage, in the olden days, people used to take the oil bath, every week. And this kind of gives a massage to all your parts of the body, including your scalp and so on. Those things have gone. And there is a very powerful thing called Panchakarma in Ayurveda, where they clean up, cellular level in 1 week. So these are things that activate otherwise normally inactive parts of the body. So maybe they can protect us from cancer. That's my view. So keep every part of your body and joints active by simple exercises, oil massage and yogasanas. In fact, when I talk about this thing, now there have been very powerful experiments on rats that when you make those rats run a lot, and within a short time, they find that there are new neurons born in the area of the brain which is responsible for memory. And that is very, very key discovery. We cannot do this test on human beings, unfortunately, because in the rat they sacrifice the brain and test for this. In human beings, you know that it's not possible, but we believe that this is possible. So simple, running, when active running can increase your new neurons in your brain. And communication is completely a separate topic. Again, if I give some time, I can give some exercises in communication, how to listen to people beyond the words. Many times people complain, you are totally useless. And if you just listen to that words and interpret, you will get so upset. But what they really mean is that they're upset with something, and that is how they talk. So you need to learn to listen beyond the words. And effective communication. People think that if they know more English, they can talk well and they can communicate well. No, that has no connection. Effective communication is 90% listening and just 10% speaking. You completely listen, then you can talk just one sentence and take care of the other human being. And we are social animals. So some of you, maybe always either in the hostel or in the lab, and that is not very good for you. So please make sure that you are involved in some activity that involves others. It could be jogging, football, singing, playing instruments, whatever. And if you are like me with no extracurricular activities, then I suggest that take your friends for coffee and followed by a relaxed walk. So, create something that involves other human beings. That gives you so much of relaxation. And another powerful thing that I learned is, when I was young, I used to think, what is this dance? People are seeing dance for 1.5 hours. I used to get bored. And some of you may be like that. So what I learned is simply dancing with your favorite music. Even if you're alone, it relaxes you so much. And I want to show you, my favorite song with which I dance.
The audio is not. I think the computer sound you haven't shared.
So you are not able to listen to this?
No.
Oh, I see. Okay. Is there a way of connecting that? Anyone knows?
You may have to unshare and share again, where at the bottom it will give an option to include the sound.
Oh, okay.
Sir, if there is speaker, you can just put on the speaker and put the mic near there. It will work. Should work.
See, there is a mic in my webcam itself. Whatever that picks up is the only thing. Let me see whether when I disconnect and connect, whether it can be.
The bottom.
Include computer sound, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you able to listen to it now?
Yes.
Okay. So let me replay from where I wanted to play. It's one of my favorite songs, and even this is in my mother tongue Tamil. Some of you may not understand, but I've seen comments from even people from US that they appreciated this song. Listen to this song. I don't know any dancing, but just move your legs. So, what I wanted to say is that this may not be your most favorite song. That is one of my favorite songs. Whatever you like, some simple songs, with some nice thought or nice music, and when you dance with that, you can see, your body relaxes, your mind relaxes. So there are, This may not be the only thing that I'm just sharing what I found effective. You know that, in villages, everybody comes out and dances in some festivals. I now realize that, age, that, that is something that really relaxes those people. Coming back, neuroplasticity, I told you the brain is the most neuroplastic organ in the body, and it can relearn lost functions after a stroke at an old age. You talk to a neurologist. I have very good friends who are neurologists and neurosurgeons, and they tell me that, when you have a stroke and some part of the body, the brain is dead, so I lose speech, or I lose the movement of my right leg or something. You can learn, but you have to learn like a child. So it requires a lot of effort. But if you put that effort, new areas of the brain, other neurons will learn that function. Whatever age, even if you're 70, you can learn. And see, that is the extraordinary power of the brain. They call it neuroplasticity. Plasticity in the sense it is malleable, and it can change its function. It can learn and unlearn. Like I told you, you can also unlearn something that you don't want to keep it in your brain and occupy space there. And so this is where, I told you, if I get another chance, after this COVID is over, as far as I'm concerned, COVID is already over, but some of you may not think so. So I would like to show some demonstrations. I told you one thing is about that changing the temperature of your this thing, and there is another thing called a pendulum experiment. I can make you hold a pendulum and make it move left to right or top to bottom, or go, clockwise or anti-clockwise, just by your thinking about it. So it's really amazing how powerful is your brain, and when you have a deep thought, how that brain can change many things in your body. And connected to that is, of course, you need to also strongly believe that it will happen, and to believe that what you think will happen, you also have to have a certain connection to the power of your words. What do you mean by power of your words? See, many times we talk very loosely. In English, they call it talk is cheap. Somebody calls you for a marriage, you know very well that you will not go because it's at the other end of Bangalore and it will take one day. So you are very clear. Oh, okay, I will definitely come, you say. See, that is fundamentally a lie. Once I learned about it, I tell them that I may not be able to come. So it immediately relieves me, and also I get powerfully connected to my word. If I say that, I want to do it somehow. And if I don't, I may not do it, I tell them that I may not come. I try to come, but I think it's difficult. Or sometimes I even bluff by giving some other reason. They are very close, but I make sure that they know that I may not be able to come. So in every activity that you do, if you say something and you honor that word, then you slowly give power to your word, and you will start believing your own word. And when that is there, your brain also believes what you say, and it will happen. So if you are somebody who has no trust of your own word, this will not work. So you need to also work on it. So this blood flow, I already told you how it's not possible. So there is something called biofeedback. This is a great man. I was lucky to meet him when I was doing my PhD in IIT Madras. His name was Elmer Green, and he had a program called Voluntary Health Program. Voluntary Controls, yeah. His lab was called Voluntary Controls Lab. He was in Kansas City, and he showed there some of these things. Like I said, you can change the blood flow in the part of the body, and he showed that the back pain is due to less blood flow in that area of the body, and he put some transducers and showed the feedback to the people how much of blood is flowing, and by just thinking, they were able to increase the blood flow, and they were able to get rid of that back pain and so on. It's a very powerful thing, and there is a lot of research going on in that. And there is an area called psychoneuroimmunology, which is based on this now. And very closely connected is what is called a placebo and nocebo. Placebo is something, if you talk to any doctors, they will tell you, if they come up with a new medicine and they want to try it on patients and see whether it is effective, they know that if somebody thinks that it's a medicine, somebody gets cured. And that is what is called placebo. And they call it double-blind trials. So the person who gives a medicine he will not know whether he is giving the medicine or not. He thinks that he is giving medicine to everyone, but the person who conducts the experiment, 50% of the people he gives medicine, 50% of them he gives some just sugar pill, which has exactly same color, packed in everything same way, and he knows which number is going to whom. But he will not see the patient. So that is why it is called double blind. The person who conducts the experiment will never meet the patients or the other control subjects. The person who conducts, he doesn't know who gets medicine or anything. And all the patients, they think that they are getting medicine. And what they have found is, in any such trials, the people who are getting that the placebo, which is not a medicine and just a lookalike, at least 30 to 40% get cured. Whatever the thing you ask, it will be very surprising. And so a drug is certified only if it is effective consistently higher than the placebo effect. And then it is statistically significant in being better than the placebo. So if some medicine gives only 40%, 45% cure, then they will say this is placebo and it will not see the light of the day. And connected to that, there was somebody called Norman Cousins. You must buy this book from Amazon. The name of the book is Anatomy of an Illness as Perceived by the Patient. So he had a deadly disease, this may be some 40, 50 years back, when he came back from Russia, and the doctor said, you have only a few more months. He said, the hospital is a toxic place. And then he left the hospital, and he had a good friend who is a doctor, and he took a nice room in a hotel, and he saw all the comedy movies, and he took a lot of vitamin C and so on. And he came perfectly all right. And for the rest of his life, he lectured even in MIT and other places the benefit of laughing and positive thoughts. So let me see what is the time now. What time I should stop, Dr. Banani?
I think you can, how much more you want to share? We have time. I think till 6 is okay.
Okay.
We can have question and answers also after that.
So we can have questions after 6. Is that okay?
I guess it's okay.
Okay.
Anant, is it okay?
So students should say that, if you want to go away and you are already bored,
No, we are all enjoying, I think.
shut up. Shut up. I think it's good.
Okay.
Thank you. So more and more I read. Unfortunately, I never studied biology, in school or college or in my PhD. I did in biomedical engineering, but I never studied biology. So, but now I find it very interesting. So, anybody knows here how many cells that we have in our body? You know that we are born as a single cell, and that cell divides and divides and divides and divides in a fetus, and then thousands and more come, and finally a fetus is formed. So, an adult, anybody, just have a wild guess, somebody. Your guess is wrong, you won't die. That much I know, because I have done many times in my life. It was wrong, and I'm still alive. Somebody, please.
So Samlesh has said in the chat 33 million or trillion.
33 million or trillion. Very close. It is 37.2 trillion. That's what they said. But again, nobody has counted it. But one of the recent papers, 1 or 2 years back, they did a lot of experiments and projected, how different cells, the density of the heart cells are different from lung and so on. So they did enormous calculation. Finally said it may be roughly around 37.2 trillion cells. So our body is a marvelous chemical factory. So if you take any one of those trillion cells, it will have the same DNA. So people tell, you can identify a person by your hair also, because everything has the same thing. So when we eat, you may eat a dosa or a chapati or something, and see the rice or the dal or the wheat in that, it has its own DNA, because that's also, came from an organism. And within a day, your body has to break down the complete thing, and you will not find the DNA again anywhere in your body except in your alimentary colon or in your this thing, it has not been excreted. So entire thing is converted into your DNA. Just think of it. And maintaining 37.2 trillion cells this way, day after day after day after day. And when one cell divides and divides and divides into so many trillion cells, some of them specialize to be heart, some of them specialize to be brain, some of them specialize to be muscles. And the doctor says, oh, this muscle you're gone, and then don't come. But how did it first specialize? So that is because the same cell with the same DNA, some genes express, it seems, and then it becomes a heart cell. Some other genes express, it becomes a brain cells. So fundamentally, this what they call stem cells, or these undifferentiated or unspecialized cells, which can now again, program itself to become anything. And when this cell specialize, I want to ask that question. Does the mother need to be a gynecologist for that child to grow like this and specialize and all that? Even an ignorant woman, when she is pregnant, gets the same child. So it has nothing to do with the knowledge of any human being. So the cells have their own innate knowledge. You may call it God, or you may call it nature, or whatever. It knows, how to divide, how to specialize, and how to form 2 eyes, 2 ears, and everything. And it's not only for human beings. Every organism in the world has this enormous intelligence. And when it comes to that, this is published in the Discover magazine 2006, so we are 15 years away now. The title says, DNA is not your identity. Even now, you will see many news items and some other things. They found out this DNA for heart, or this DNA for some other disease, and if you have it, you're gone. Unfortunately, that one famous actress in US, she removed her breast because her sister was found with breast cancer. So she thought she may also carry the same genes. But this current knowledge says that this is called epigenetics. Epi means above. So it says there is some knowledge above the genetics. You may have a gene which is a bad gene, but it may not express, and then you can live a normal life. And even if it expresses, you can do that. You can suppress it in some way. I personally believe that when I started doing this pranayam and these things, my genes, earlier I used to say that, my mother and all her sisters and all her brothers and all her children, everybody has BP, so I have to get it. It's a gift. I used to say that. I believe that I have to live with that for the rest of my life. But I know now for 5 years it is not. So it is epigenetics that due to whatever happened, those genes which are expressing giving me BP, they have been suppressed. And their activity, the gene cannot be changed, DNA cannot be changed. But it's what they call expression can be suppressed or switched off. So, when you have a fan at home, you have 2 types of control. You can switch it on or off. So it blasts, or that is completely off. Or you have a regulator, these days you have a continuous regulator, you can adjust the speed. So there are 2 mechanisms in your genes which can either switch on or switch off, or it can do a graded effort. That means it can reduce or increase your expression. And once you change that, and this can change due to your diet and your thoughts, and stress can affect it in a negative manner, and so on. Many experiments have been done it. And they say once you change it, you carry it to your generations. And these experiments have been done on rats. And they also found, people who were some pregnant women who looked at the WTC building falling down, and some of the gene expression changed due to that extreme fear, and they found that it was there in their offsprings. So that is the mechanism of epigenetics. I'm not an expert in this, but this slide I took out from the National Institute of Health. So a lot of things have been studied, and they say that how these things work. One is that some methyl group, and another is some other factors. And in one case, it shows that it can switch it off, and in another case, it can give a graded response. So these are things, and this is a very interesting experiment. This man took two identical twins born to the same rat, and just he knows how to modify things, epigenetically. And this kind of chemicals which are called this methyl group, methylation they call it. I'm not an expert, so please don't ask me any question on this particular thing, what is that or not. But you can study this paper. I have given you this reference. So by just changing the diet for these two things for over a period of time, you can see that one of has grown like this, another has grown like this. They are identical twins. So he really proved for all time, when I took it, it was 1,600 citations, now it may be much more, that this changing your gene expression is clearly possible just by diet in this particular case. So you can modify your gene expression, and people have studied for obesity. People believe that people talk about an obesity gene, but even if you have an obesity gene, if you control your diet and do exercise, you can reduce. So, and there is a paper, PLOS-1 in April 2013, just by, a set of, pranayam and meditation and so on for two hours, one group, and another group, what they call control group, they ask them to relax, they walk in the woods and also listen to some nice music and so on. So they tap the blood before and after. So just within the 2 hours, they found that the expression of 111 genes changed towards positive. And these are genes related to the immune system. So one more thing I want to talk about health, this may be the last point. So, a lot of this thing talk about, how you have to take, very purified water, and it has become a very big business. So when I came to know about something about this, very surprising. See, your alimentary canal has no branch. From the time you eat your this thing through the stomach, pancreas, and everything else, whatever, it's a continuous tube through the small intestine, large intestine, and goes out. So there is no branch. It cannot go to any part of whatever you eat, cannot go to any part of your body. And what is useful is taken through the fine pores, which are, micron pores or submicron pores in the small intestine. So the body knows what it needs, and the body knows what it doesn't need. What it doesn't need, it just send it out. And when you drink water, it goes through this. So in my personal view, you don't need to take so much care for water as much for your breathing. Why? Our cities are highly polluted. Atmospheric air gets in touch with the blood directly. See, when you breathe in, if you know how your lung works, the air directly goes into your lungs and in the small sacs there, and through the blood vessels, it gets in direct contact with your blood. And there is this exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. And so when your air is polluted, the air that you breathe in is polluted, it goes in direct contact with your blood and nobody talks about it. Whereas the water, which does not go into any part of your body directly unless something your body decides to take in, there is so much of business around it. So we need to know more. That's where I said we need to constantly learn about all this. Then we know that certain things are much more important. So I say that recharge yourself with fresh oxygen by simple deep breathing at home or in green parks, etc. So something more about breathing. Brain cells die if they are devoid of oxygen continuously for 4 minutes. That's what is called stroke. Some blood vessel is blocked because of some reason or because of heart or something, and some area of the brain doesn't get blood. If it is exceeding 4 minutes, it dies, and that part is gone. And of course, like I said, you can learn, but you have to learn like a child. So as knowledge workers, all of us need an efficient brain, and studies show that breathing becomes very shallow when our attention is very high. So we need good oxygen to compensate. And blood pressure also slowly comes into control when you regularly take relaxed, deep, slow breaths. If you want to know more about it, you should listen to my talks. And I have given a talk through NIMANS, and I have given a talk through IIT Madras. Those things have more details on that, or I can send you my book chapter. And another thing is 30% of your digestion takes place in your mouth. Unfortunately, no doctor talks about it. So if you are, seeing TV or listening to your friend or looking at YouTube and you are eating, you don't even know whether you have bit whatever you are eating sufficiently. And certain things, if they are not properly digested in your mouth by your saliva, they are not going to be digested. They will be just sent out. Okay. And this is some details about how powerful is your teeth and how it can munch much better than these things. And also, it's very important that digestive juices are secreted when you are eating. See, when you see I don't want to say certain kind of movies, certain other juices will be secreted in the body, and you know what I mean. Or you see a horror movie, it's good not to do those things when you eat. My father always used to say, don't do anything else when you eat. I never understood those days, but now I understand. So when you eat, you need to only eat, and focus on eating, bite well, grind it, and your throat should say that I don't know what you ate. That kind of grinding you should have. And going out of time, one more minute. So this is the last slide. Let me stop here. So there is a chemist called Otto Warburg. You can see about him on this thing. He showed that by actual experiment, he got a Nobel Prize, and he created cancer in rats. And half of the rats, he made sure that around the cancer tissue, he made sure that there is sufficient oxygen. And the other group of rats, he just left them. So the groups which are left, they died after some time because cancer spread. And the group where he ensured that sufficient oxygen is there around the cancer area, the cancer never spread. So he said that cancer can only spread when there is insufficient oxygen in the tissue. This is a very, very crucial thing. And unfortunately, no doctor talks about it. Okay, because they cannot sell drugs if they sell this. And I already told you about exposure to sunlight. And let me stop with this. So our thoughts have biochemical, neurochemical, neuropharmacological effects on our brain and body. Our brain circuits can get rewired in milliseconds, positively or negatively. And you need to honor your word and give power to it, then your brain can do wonders. And you are the only one who can make simple changes to your diet, the way you eat and breathe, your exposure to sunlight, and how you interpret what is happening in your life. That can silently and smoothly take you to positive health. And I urge you to take simple positive actions from today. Take at least one step based on my talk, and that will be the fulfillment of my talk. Thank you. So I am available for questions.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. It is a very nice talk with many important informations. I have one question. Nikita, can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
But my question is not related to the points you picked. Rather, it's more general. We always tell that our modern science is so updated, advanced, and all. If it is so updated, advanced, and all, then why still we need to perform experiments on animals, rats, all these things?
Because certain experiments cannot be done on human beings, right? See, like I said, if you want to know whether new cells are born, the cells are so small, we don't have the sufficient resolution of our imaging systems to show whether there are new cells created in your hippocampus. So the only way they can see it is, they take a rat and do the similar things and take micro sections, one section of the brain which is just 1 micron thick, and then they can look at it under really heavy expanding microscope, and then they can count and say that yeah, there are some new cells.
Oh, my question is not in that context. That I know many of my friends that they also do. My question is on the other context. We always claim that our science is so advanced and all, but still we want to perform experiments on animals. So then where is the advancement then? Still we are not been able to eliminate that kind of experiments. So my question is on a different context.
I don't know who told you that we are very advanced. I don't believe that. because in our tradition, it is said that, the goddess Saraswati said that, what I know is just one handful of sand in the, she was in the ocean bed, and she took a sand in her hand and she said, "This is all I know." So the more you actually learn, then you know more about your ignorance. Nobody can claim that we know everything. And I have talked to I have very good friends in Imans, and they tell me that they know very little about the brain, even today. There are areas of the brain they still don't know why it exists. So what we know is very little, and another thing is what we know, what is logical also we don't do. Man is an irrational animal. For example, I got a best paper award for a paper last year I presented about why the currently designed ICUs are not the good thing to keep patients of COVID. See, you put a patient in an ICU when you want to prevent infection to him from outside. But what is the logic in putting 10 highly infected COVID patients inside the ICUs, and it's a closed place? So everybody is actively exhaling millions of this thing, and the air is circulated because AC, gets very little of fresh air. It's to ensure that it is cold, the air is constantly circulated, and those filters I have found out from hospitals, they cannot filter the current virus, which is submicron, this thing. So they're actively increasing the viral load for the patient. I'm sorry to say, many people might have died because of this. And many doctors and nurses initially also, I feel they died because of this. So it is one thing to know and another thing to practice. And what we know, honestly, is very, very little.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So is there any other questions from other students or anyone wants to ask?
I have a question, Anand here.
Yes.
So, Mr. Ramakrishnan, you told us that you started regular breathing exercises maybe a few years ago, right? 5 or 10 years ago. So, what was the single most important thing that helped you persist with it? Because we know that it is important, and then we start, let's say, I start doing it and I do it for a week or so. But then after that, I mean, the practice slowly comes down, and then slowly I get into another routine. So does having a teacher help, or what is the way that we can make it a habit for the rest of our lives?
Wonderful question. Thank you very much for this. This is a very, very important, relevant question for all of us. So I told you about, you giving power to your word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, don't take anything negatively, but look at your own life. I learned this very powerfully in that landmark education. They give most important to your word. If you say something, you have to do it, and they insist and make sure that you make it as your practice. Otherwise, I can't be a leader there. As a seminar, and we used to be trained every 3 months. I need to go to Bombay or Delhi on my own expense, and complete 2 days. They used to constantly train us as long as it was a seminar. So when you have a powerful relationship to your word, you will honor your word. I remember Dr. Banani at the end of the thing, she said, you need to give a word that you will practice this at least for 40 days. Correct me, Dr. Banani, if that not 40 days, something like that. And she said, after that, you can leave it if you think it is not useful, but you must give a word that you should practice it for 40 days. And believe me, I practice that for 40 days. I drink a lot of coffee, tea, and we are also not to do that. And those 40 days, I stopped coffee, tea. And I saw the effect at the end of those 40 days, and then there was no looking back. I did more programs, I learned more things, I learned more science, behind it, and this is where I am.
Thank you so much. That answers my question.
So all of us need to, improve our relationship to our word. That is the crux. Then if you say, you will do it.
Any other question from students? You can ask without any hesitation.
Yeah, please ask any question. If I know, I will answer. I don't promise it.
Priyanka wants to ask. Please, Priyanka, go ahead.
Hi, Professor. So in the institute, like these days, we are just talking like how to take care of our physical and mental well-being.
Right.
But I want to raise a point where like if someone gets into depression, then we should also be trained to handle that person. That depressed person could be my friend. So in that case, we should also be, trained or aware in a way that we could help that person out. So do you really think that is it like only we can take care of our mental health, or our friends can also help us in that situation?
Your friends can definitely help us. I don't know whether we can become mental health professionals. I doubt it because I don't think I can handle somebody who is in depression. I can advise you not to get into depression by doing all this much before and have a healthy lifestyle so that you won't get into that. But if somebody is that, I'm afraid I'm not qualified to that, and it's very difficult. I don't think personally it's possible for an institute to train all the students to take care of other people like this. But like I said, you can really help by alerting somebody who can take care of it. You can alert your committee, or you can alert the doctors, or somebody who can, or their parents, or whoever, who can take some action on that. And if you want to personally learn, that's up to you. I feel that if you are really interested, then you should also learn. You can. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to expect an institute to teach that to everyone. It's not possible.
Thank you.
Any other question? Okay. Okay. I did not see any raise hand. Okay. Then I'll hand over this to. Okay, Akshay. Yeah, go ahead, Akshay.
Yes, sir. So thank you, sir, for this for giving us the details, scientific details of yoga and breathing. So I want to ask another aspect of this yoga. Means is there any biochemical or metabological effect of concentration during yoga or any other thing?
Consultation.
Yes. Suppose you are doing yoga, and if you are concentrating on it or concentrating on any other activity, so is there any scientific aspect of that?
Yeah, people have studied stress hormones, and the hormone levels come down. You can simply test the stress level of a person by testing certain chemicals from your saliva, and people have done that test, and they found that at the end of a simple session of yogasanas, the stress level comes down. Or breathing.
Okay, okay.
There are other chemical tests, but I'm not.
Thanks, sir.
Cannot give you much detail, but you can refer. There are any number of studies like that.
Nice. Thank you, Akshay. Any other question? Okay.
Banchan, I wanted to make one comment. I mean, in response to Priyanka's question, right, Professor Ramakrishnan, if I may add. So what we are trying to do in our department, we are trying to get a book called the Feeling Good Handbook. Basically, it talks about how you can kind of do some exercises which can help you when you're facing some daily like negative emotions like anger or sadness, or even you may be anxious, worried, or depressed. And we are trying to purchase about 10 copies of this book, and we are planning to circulate them amongst the students so that they can be more aware of mental health issues and challenges. And perhaps maybe that book would help Priyanka. So I just wanted to add that we have placed an order. Maybe in a month or so we'll have books, and then we'll be able to see whether they are actually. Just want to add.
Yeah, I really don't know what will help, but we should try whatever is in our. I was added to the our department wellness committee last week, so we had a meeting, and he said to come up with a simple Google form where people can anonymously give some complaint about their issues, whatever the.
We also started that.
So we don't. I'm not saying that will work or your book may work, and the different things may work for different people. So we have to try whatever we think of. Not an easy issue. Mind is very complicated.
Okay. Any other? Okay. I think it's already
more than 6, and Professor Ramakrishnan also speaking from quite a long time.
I have no problems. I have no problem. I have time and I have energy.
I know you have a lot of energy.
If somebody is interested, you can go out, but people want me to shut up, then we can close. And anybody wants any questions later also, my mail ID is just agr@iic. You can send any mails, if you want, or I think some hand is up.
Manu.
Manu. Yes, Manu, go ahead.
Sir, I have a question. So there is huge research going in X medicine, Y medicine, but when it week practices, the amount of research that, like you said, it decreases BP is substantially less. So don't you think there should be a focus on such research? Because these medicine-based prescribed by the big companies, and there is no backing for this kind of research.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, but it's very difficult to fight against this big pharma. They are the real. They are more dangerous than this Afghanistan terrorists, in my opinion. So, but we don't have much wherewithal to test that. What we could do is learn. We can learn. We can tell others, and we can practice. And so you have the confidence that it works, and tell more people.
Thank you, Manu. Thank you. Any other question? Okay. Oh, don't get me wrong. It's not like I just want to finish the session. Nothing like that. If any question, then otherwise I'll just request Dr. Vanani to say vote of thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Professor A.G. Ramakrishnan, for giving this wonderful talk in our department. And because we, as in wellness committee, we time to time organize events, and it has been very inspiring journey when the professors come and share their personal stories of inspiration. And your session is not only personal story, but also so many scientific evidences of things that is helping people across the world for the ancient tradition. And that is something very beautiful. And as you said that you are practicing also Sudarshan Kriya and meditation. And one thing that I really liked from beginning, that not only you practice, you always want to go to the deepest core. As I am on the other side, I'm like, I want to keep the mysticism alive. I want to practice and enjoy. 17 years non-stop it is going on. And of course, I am training others also. But that, what Manu asked, the scientific validation, that is also an important aspect of this, very important aspect, because people want proof. Our scientific mind wants proof, and that is something you are constantly working for. And that is I'm really inspired about. You are honestly doing so much research. So keep inspiring all, and I especially your work on the for the visually impaired people, that also inspires me a lot. And I'm sure our department, everybody who attended this session got immensely benefited from this session. And thank you so much once again for taking time on Gandhi Jayanti. And you, one thing about Gandhiji I really cherish, he says be the change that you want to see in the world. And I think you are living that, definitely. And thank you again for joining me.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. Very nice talk.
Thanks.
Thank you all the students and faculties and everybody who joined today on a Saturday on Gandhi Jayanti. And now you can go ahead and enjoy your dinner also. As AGR said, don't forget to acknowledge one person per day. Continue with healthy eating, healthy sleeping, healthy breathing habits, and healthy drinking habits also. Oh.
Thanks for reminding that, Banani. Yeah, I think you can close the recording now. And
okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Ramakrishnan. It was amazing to listen to you and to all your experiences and all these